The bus services have been tagged according to their colors, as white will be school buses, the green are normal services, and the blue ones for exclusive purpose. Cisse also made it abundantly clear that his institution was well equipped, adding that when it comes to maintenance and upkeep of the buses, the issue is on top of its agenda.
We don't only have the buses, we have the trained personnel who because they are trained in what they are doing, they would know how to take good care of the buses because they are trained in what they do, from the bus driver to the conductors to the inspectors. Everybody is trained, and I think that training will help increase the durability of the buses. In the same vein, we have enough spare parts and enough materials to maintain the buses to a very high degree and credible level.
Now that these services have been unveiled, passengers who wish to travel with the buses can board the buses at the Kanifing Depot Gate or at various bus stops within the Sarakunda and Birkama Highway. Rohibitei, Grts News.
That report there by Rohibitei takes us to our first break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Washington is coming to terms with a shootout on Monday that killed more than 12 people at a naval yard. The gunman has been identified as a contractor, a 34-year-old man called Aaron Alexis. As we hear in this report by CNN's Jessica Yellen, many questions remain unanswered about the as the police continue investigations into the shooting, which shocked residents of the city.
Chaos and confusion across the nation's capital. 8:15 a.m., an emergency call reaches Washington police. Word of a shooter at the Navy Yard.
Within literally 2 to 3 minutes, Metropolitan Police officers were on the scene. Now, internal security had already engaged, identified and engaged the suspect. We already had victims down at that point.
Inside, witnesses say a fire alarm is pulled. Mayhem breaks out in Building 197.
As he came around the corner, he aimed his gun at us, and he fired at least 2 or 3 shots.
He was far enough down the hall that we couldn't see his face, but we could see him with the rifle, and he raised and aimed at us and fired.
A maintenance worker warns this man of a shooter, and the next thing he knows...
And that's when he got shot. Fairly certain he was dead because he was shot in the head.
9:09 a.m., the Navy alerts via Twitter 1 injury and orders the facility's 3,000 employees to shelter in place. 11:53, a Navy official says a suspected shooter is dead. 12:15, the Washington police chief announces shocking news. Possibly 2 other shooters are on the loose.
One being a white male who was last seen around 8:35, 8:40 this morning in a khaki tan military uniform.
Later, federal officials would say they believe there was only one shooter. 12:30 p.m., the president expresses his horror.
We are confronting yet another mass shooting, and today it happened on a military installation in our nation's capital.
4 p.m., almost 8 hours after that first emergency call, a break. The FBI releases the name of the shooter, 34-year-old Aaron Alexis, a military contractor from Texas. Washington's mayor announces a terrible new number, 13, including the shooter, dead. And he speaks to what's on so many people's minds.
We don't have any reason at this stage to suspect terrorism, but certainly it has not been ruled out.
Officials tell CNN the shooter was a military contractor, which could help explain how he accessed the secure facility. But they say his motive is still a mystery. Jessica Yellen, CNN, Washington.
A new UN report has shown that chemical weapons have been used in Syria last month. The revelation has sparked fresh debate between US, France and Russia on how the situation should be tackled. Much of the evidence collected in Syria was analyzed at a lab in the Netherlands, and this work is likely carried out in secret. But CNN's Frederick Blackgan had a rare access to the lab to see how the samples are analyzed.
Samples from chemical weapons sites are brought to this lab. The transport container is made to withstand a plane crash. The scientists use detectors while opening it to make sure they're not exposed to nerve agents. Dr. Hugh Gregg is the head of OPCW's lab.
The final container is the sample itself, the samples that were collected in the field. We ensure that those seals are absolutely correct and that they haven't been tampered with, and then we're ready for that sample.
Samples are analyzed in a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, or GCMS, a device that breaks the samples down into its components and then identifies the chemical agents.
The routine GCMS analysis that we would do for environmental samples can see things down below a part per million. They can see samples that have been there for weeks or months.
Under the threat of U.S. strikes and with Russian diplomatic pressure, Bashar al-Assad has agreed in principle to put Syria's chemical weapons under international control. The OPCW would most likely take the lead, cataloging and monitoring the stockpiles. The organization has done it in other countries and knows how long it takes.
For our inspectors to catalog that, they would actually have to go and witness how many artillery shells, how much would they contain on an average fill. They would have to, look at storage containers. They would have to figure all that out. So cataloging something would depend on how many sites there are, how many different munitions there are. It could take months.
Fred Pleitgen, CNN, the Netherlands.
A landmark trial is underway in China and will help shed light on the inner working of the Communist Party. 6 party officials are accused of torturing a party member to death. This CNN exclusive by David Mackenzie looks at how the 6 accused hope to escape the grip of the law.
80 million odd Communist Party members are effectively above the law. They don't answer to the courts. They answer to a shadowy internal disciplinary group that investigates them for possible corruption or other wrongdoings. And in this case, it's a rare look inside of the brutal world of Communist Party justice.
In a quiet tea house, Wu Qian agreed to secretly meet us. She says she's been followed by state security ever since her husband died. When she last saw him, he was barely recognizable, called at 1 a.m. to Wenzhou Hospital after he was missing for more than a month.
The man I saw at the emergency room was like a skinny beggar. His hair and beard was long, and his body was covered with bruises. I was completely astonished, and I shook him. When I touched him, I felt his body was cold. He was tortured. I knew it from the moment I saw the bruises on his body. It's evident that he was tortured for a long time.
Before his brutal death, Yu Chi-yi was a rising star of the Communist Party, allowing his family to live a life of privilege. Then, after a business trip to Beijing, Yu was picked up by party investigators for, quote, minor misconduct. Driven into town, and according to the indictments, after weeks of interrogation, tortured to death in one of these rooms. Prosecutors say 6 men drowned him by dunking his head in ice water in a building called the Garden of Ultimate Justice. Falling victim to a shadowy system called Shuanggui, designed to curb corruption in the party. Hidden from public view, defense lawyers say that interrogation, torture, and even suicides are common. But this case gives a rare look at the hidden world of Communist Party-style justice. In this case, the party is taking action against the interrogators, but Wu is pushing for more justice. For her husband's torture and killing, the 6 men are facing only assault charges. She says she will stop at nothing to fight the Shuanggui system.
The only thing I can do now is to stay strong and have faith. This system is evil. It's sinister beyond our imagination. All I want to do now is to reveal the truth.
She says her husband deserves it and wants others to avoid his fate.
Relitza, some have said that this trial of the 6 interrogators shows some level of openness in the Chinese legal system. But we learned from the family's lawyers that they were in fact thrown out of court proceedings today and throughout the day. CNN's